everyone, and welcome back to Little Books, Great Stories. Today we're going to read Vivi Loves Science. Do you love science? Well, if you do, this is the book for you. We're going to learn about the amazing underwater world and all the creatures who live inside it. Keep watching, because at the end, there's going to be directions on how to do your own science experiment. And some discussion questions to check if you are really listening. Well, make sure to subscribe to Little Books Great Stories, like the video if you haven't already, and let's start reading. Vivi Loves Science by Kimberly Derting and Shelli R.J. Vivi loved science. She loved learning about nature and planet Earth. She especially loved the ocean and everything that lives in it. That's why Vivi was excited. Today, her science class was going to the beach. Vivi sat next to her lab partner, Graham, on the bus. She made a list of things she wanted to investigate when they got there.
"I hope we see a dolphin," she said. "Did you know that some dolphins can stay underwater for up to 15 minutes?
"Wow," said Graham. "I wish I could do that." When they arrived at the shore, their science teacher, Miss Cousteau, said, "Today we're going to study tide pools. We might spot starfish, crabs, or even a jellyfish." Vivi raised her hand.
"Did you know that jellyfish have lived on Earth longer than dinosaurs and sharks?"
"That's true," said Miss Cousteau. "Jellyfish have been around for at least 500 million years. Scientists think they are the oldest animals on our planet."
"Sharks have only been here for about 400 million years,
said Vivi. "Are sharks fish?" asked Graham. "Yes," Miss Cousteau said. "Sharks are fish because they breathe underwater."
"Did you know that the biggest shark is called a whale shark?" said Vivi. "Whale sharks can be 40 feet long." "What's the smallest shark?" asked Mia. "The dwarf lantern shark," said Vivi. "They are 6 inches long and their bellies light up."
"Right," said Miss Cousteau. "You'll be a great marine biologist someday, Vivi." "Now, let's make aquascopes so we all can see underwater," said Miss Cousteau. Everyone raced over to the picnic tables where a park ranger was setting out supplies. Graham decorated his aquascope with duct tape. Vivi glued some seashells around the edge of hers.
"This looks fantastic," she said.
You can make your own aquascope if you just follow the directions on this page, but we'll come back to it at the end. Ranger Earl led them through the dunes to the beach. Vivi and her friends were careful to stay on the path, away from the nesting birds and delicate grasses. "Does anyone know how a tadpole is created?" Ranger Earl asked. Vivi raised her hand.
"When the tide comes in, water collects in pools that plants and animals can live in. When the tide goes out, the pools are still there."
"You got it," said Ranger Earl. "The tide is low now, so we should have lots of tadpoles to investigate." "Everyone work with your lab partner," said Miss Cousteau. "And be sure to record what you find on your scavenger hunt worksheet."
"Let's look for a big pool,"
said Vivi to Graham. They raced toward the rocks. "There's one!" Graham pointed to a large pool of water. "You go first, and I'll record the data." Vivi peered into the water with her aquascope.
"Wow," she said. "I think I see an anemone."
Graham checked off sea anemone on the list. Vivi called out each animal she spotted.
"Snails! Baby clams! barnacles, 4 hermit crabs, a minnow.
Do you see any plants? Graham asked.
There's some seaweed and algae,
Vivi said.
Do you want to look?
Graham put his aquascope into the water. Mussels! A starfish! A sea urchin! There are tons of shells, too. Vivi spotted a big seashell near the tide pool. She picked it up and held it to her ear.
This sounds just like the ocean, she said, but it's really air traveling through the shell.
Graham listened too. Sounds like waves to me, he said.
I wonder who lived in this shell,
said Vivi. Maybe a giant crab, said Graham. Let's put it back, said Vivi,
so someone will move in again.
Vivi pointed at a flat rock closer to the water's edge.
Let's see if anything lives under there, she said.
It's an excellent hiding place, said Graham. Maybe we'll even spot an eel. Together, Vivi and Graham turned over the rock. What's that? Said Graham. It looks like a toad.
Look! Over here! We found a huge fish!
Vivi yelled. The entire class raced over to see what Vivi and Graham had discovered in the tide pool.
We need to get that fish back into the ocean,
said Mia.
It's running out of water. Wait, I don't think we should touch it,
Vivi said. You're right, Vivi, Miss Cousteau said. Let's ask the ranger. She'll know what to do. That is a plain fin midshipman, Ranger Earl said. This fish buries itself in wet sand and mud when protecting its nest. Graham pointed to the little orange circle stuck to the bottom of the rock. What's that stuff? Those must be her eggs, said Vivi. Actually, those are his eggs, Ranger Earl explained.
His?
Mia asked. Yes, the dad stays with the nest until the eggs hatch, Ranger Earl said.
How long does that take?
Vivi asked. The dad protects and cleans the eggs for weeks and weeks, said Ranger Earl. Sometimes there are hundreds of eggs.
I'm glad we didn't move him,
said Mia. You are right not to move him, said Ranger Earl. Whenever we're in nature, it's important to look at animals and not touch.
Plus, this is his home and we're just visitors,
Vivi said. Ranger Earl led the class along the water's edge. They spotted something lying on the sand.
What is that?
asked Mia. Be careful, that's a jellyfish, Ranger Earl said. Do they bite? Graham asked.
No, jellyfish don't have teeth,
Vivi said. Right, most jellyfish have tentacles like this one, Ranger Earl said. They can still sting when they're out of the water. Before you leave, you can each pick one shell to take home, Ranger Earl said. Just make sure it's empty. Vivi and Graham hunted for the perfect shells. Graham found a white scallop shell, but Vivi kept searching until she found something unexpected. A shark tooth, she said. Good eyes, Ranger Earl said, inspecting Vivi's treasure. Is that tooth 400 million years old? Asked Graham. Probably not, said Ranger Earl, but it could be 100 years old. As the class headed back to the bus, Vivi and Graham took one last look at the ocean. I think I see a shark, Graham shouted. Just then, something big jumped out of the water.
It's a dolphin,
said Vivi.
No, it's a whole dolphin family.
Vivi smiled. She loved field trips and the ocean, and she loved science best of all. Vivi's science facts.
Aquascope, an underwater viewing device. You can build your own. Beach. The part of the shore covered with sand or pebbles at an ocean or a lake. I love the beach. Miss Cousteau, my science teacher. She has the same last name as a super famous French undersea explorer named Jacques Cousteau. Dolphin. Dolphins look like huge fish, but they're actually mammals. They breathe air and are super smart. Dolphins are my favorite animals. Dunes. Ridges of sand created by the wind and or water. Dunes can be found in deserts or near lakes and oceans. Sylvia Earle, a famous marine biologist who has led more than 100 expeditions and spent more than 7,000 hours undersea. Jellyfish. Did you know that jellyfish aren't made of jelly and aren't even fish? They are marine invertebrates, which means they don't have spines. Jellyfish are one of the oldest animals on Earth. Marine biologist. Someone who studies all life in the ocean. I want to be a marine biologist. Nest. A shelter made by an animal for its eggs and young. Most people think nests are only for birds, but we found the plain-fin midshipman in his nest. Ocean. A ginormous body of salt water. There are 5 oceans on our planet: Pacific, Atlantic, Indian, Southern, and Arctic. Plain-fin midshipman, sometimes called the toadfish. The dad fish is in charge of guarding the eggs until they hatch. Science, a system of observations and experiments used to ask and answer questions about the natural world. I love science. Seashell. A hard, protective case created by an animal that lives in the ocean. Shark. A fast-swimming fish that lives in salt water. Like jellyfish, sharks don't have bones, but they do have lots of teeth. Tide. In most places, there are 2 high tides and 2 low tides a day. High tide is when the water is highest. Low tide is when the water level is lowest. This is the best time to find tide pools. Did you know that tides are caused by the moon, the sun, and gravity? Cool, right? Tide pool. When the tide comes in, water collects in small pools of different sizes and depths. Plants and animals live in these pools, surviving as the tide goes in and out. Waves. Most ocean waves are caused by the wind. Sometimes waves start thousands of miles offshore. Here's how to make your own aquascope. The materials you'll need are 1 large waterproof container, and some examples of this are a plastic yogurt or oatmeal container, a half-gallon milk carton, or a coffee can, and with both ends removed. You'll also need a clear plastic wrap, rubber bands or heavy-duty tape, scissors, string, which is optional, black paint is also optional, and shells, sands, and other decorations are optional. Here are the steps. Cut off both ends of your container with your scissors. This should only be done with help from an adult. Stretch the plastic wrap over one end of your container and secure it in place with sturdy rubber bands or heavy-duty tape. Trim the excess plastic. Make your own tide pool. This is a fun experiment to try no matter where you live. Remember to always return any living animals to their habitats when you are done. Here are the materials you will need: a dishpan, plastic bin, bucket, or any other large container. Seashells and rocks. Check your local craft store for decorative shells, sand dollars, and starfish if you don't live near the beach. You'll also need sand or pebbles, toy sea creatures such as turtles, starfish, crabs, octopus, snails, etc. You can make your own or buy plastic mini animals at the stores. You'll also need pitcher or cups.
Here are the directions.
Step 1. Fill your containers with rocks and sand. Step 2. Arrange the rocks to create a pool. Step 3. Place your animals and plants into the pool. Step 4. Slowly add water. Step 5. Continue adding water until you reach high tide. Step 6. After observing, remove water 1 cup at a time. Step 7. Continue removing water until you've reached low tide. And here are some discussion questions to check if you know about marine biology. Question 1. Low tide. Which animals will be exposed to the air first, and why? Question 2. High tide. Which animals will be exposed to the water first, and why? Question 3. What are most animals exposed to air? Question 4. When are most animals exposed to water? Question 5. What features do animals use to help them during the tide changes?
I hope you were able to answer all those questions easily. And if you weren't, that's okay. Just go back and try to find the answers inside the book. Thank you so much for listening to today's Read Aloud here at Little Books Great Stories. Please come back again next week for another one here at Little Books Great Stories. Bye!